He helped shoot a lot of popular boy bands to stardom.
But Lou Pearlman is known for much more than that.
Most diabolical, scheming, crooked, and dishonest SOB you could ever imagine.
Even if he gets the money back, he should be put in jail and kept in jail until he dies.
Schemer and a liar. That's probably the best way of summing up his personality.
Lou Pearlman took advantage of young men and stole tremendous amounts of money.
His musical sons used to call him Big Papa. Now they call him a thief and a con man. Big Papa was milking them dry.
What the hell are you doing?
You don't even know who I am.
Nobody cares about your stupid CDs.
Lou did not grow up as the coolest guy at his school. Lou has a pocket protector. Lou pulls his pants up really high.
Lou wanted more from those young boys than they were willing to give.
And he would be like, oh, I'm the sixth Backstreet Boy.
Oh my God, we're back again. All the sisters, everybody sing.
He wanted them to love him. He wanted sex with some of them.
We were being taken advantage of, and, nobody was looking out for us.
Nothing was the same after that meeting for any of us.
Today, I want to talk about Lou Pearlman, who is also known as Big Papa. And he is sleazy, slimy, he's a scammer, he's accused of SAing minors, as well as just, people. People. I'm already exhausted of myself at this point, and I just started. So I don't know. Good luck. He is most known for being the manager of huge boy bands like the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. When I was doing research for this case, I kept thinking like, oh my God, this guy Lou, he's like if Harvey Weinstein and Bernie Madoff had a baby, but like make it gay. You have Lou Pearlman. The whole thing starts in 1954 in Flushing, Queens. It reminds me of she was working at a beauty shop in Flushing, Queens. She was there. She was ba-da-da-da.
She was working in a bridal shop in Flushing, Queens. She was there. That's how she became the nanny.
This is like that, but like it's like that's how he became the scammer. Anyway, see how annoying I'm being? All right, so Hi, like H-Y, not high, like Hi Pearlman was his dad, and his mom was called Rainey Pearlman, and they had, in 1954, their only son, a scammer.
Schemer and a liar. That's probably the best way of summing up his personality.
And his name was Louis. Now, the thing with Louis is that he was like very awkward, as a child.
Lou did not grow up as the coolest guy at his school. Lou has a pocket protector. Lou pulls his pants up really high.
And he was overweight. And because kids are dicks, they used to call him Fat Louie. And he was very, like, as I said, shy. But he actually became friends with another kid who lived in the apartment complex that he lived in, who was just a few years older than him. And his name is Alan Gross. And he would basically steal this guy's whole ass life story and make it his own, when he would write his book or like tell his story. Like he stole his origin story, basically.
Lou was the kind of person that you're never really sure if he's telling you the truth.
So according to Lou, when he was 10 years old, he was looking out of the window of his apartment, which faced the Flushing airport, and he saw a blimp for the first time, like the Goodyear blimp, and he was in love. He's like, oh my God, I love blimps. From there, he like went to the airport and was like, I want to ride in a blimp. And they're like, you can't, you need a special pass, or if you're a journalist, you can ride the blimp. And so at 10 years old, he said, he started working at his school's newspaper and got a press pass and went to the airport and was like, here's my press pass. I'm a journalist. And they're like, okay, you can ride the blimp. And so he rode the blimp, and every summer he would work at the airport and like couldn't wait until he could finally own his own blimp and start his blimp business. And it was like that. Oh, well, turns out it was actually Alan. His apartment was the one that faced the airport. Lou's apartment didn't face the airport. And it was Alan who was into blimps. It was Alan who showed Lou his first blimp and had blimp models and blimp everything. And it was actually Alan, who was older, who was part of the school's newspaper and went in there and got a summer job. And he's the one who told Lou to come with him, and that Lou was very weird. He would just stand there and stare at people and made everyone uncomfortable. And that he told Lou, like, hey, just maybe say something, because remember, he was kind of like insecure and stuff. And so this job and Alan taking him there and telling him to talk to people is what got Lou out of his shell. Turns out he's very charming. And that sort of was when he began this outgoing personality that he had. And Alan looks back at everything that happened and says he feels like he created a monster. All right, so now it's the 70s, and Lou is going to college. He went to Queens College in Queens. He studied accounting, and he was still really into like blimps. When Lou graduated from college, he started his first business and kind of his first scam, one of many. And that was this idea he had for a helicopter service, like a shuttle, almost like instead of commuting in a car, get a helicopter, beat the traffic, go to New York, Manhattan in a helicopter. And he ends up getting these Wall Street investors to buy a helicopter for Lou for his business. Lou was supposed to like use it for the business, but everyone who knows him at that time says he was mostly using it for his own personal use, flying around pretending to be like this wealthy person who like had his own helicopter. So the business didn't last long because he was not doing what he was supposed to do. And that's when he said, okay, you know what? I'm going to finally do my dream. I'm going to do my blimp business. I keep wanting to say limp biscuit. I don't know, it reminds me of that. So now it's 1978, and there's a guy, a German guy. His name is Theodore Woolenkemper, sorry, I struggle with that. This guy, Woolenkemper, was the owner of one of the best blimp manufacturers in the world at the time, which was in Germany. And being a blimp enthusiast, Lou knew about him and kind of followed him and was in the world of blimp business. So Lou basically finds out that this guy, Theodore, is coming to New York to celebrate his birthday. And so he finds out where this guy is staying in New York, 'cause it's like, I guess on the news, or he had the know-how, the in to this information, and he mails Theodore Woolencamp a birthday card, but not any birthday card. The huge, huge, huge birthday cards. And it was like filled with glitter. And he basically like invited him to come to dinner to celebrate your birthday. Like, I love blimps and you're the blimp guy and all this. So apparently this guy, Theodore, was so flattered by it. He was like, okay. So Lou at this time is like 21, and this guy, Theodore's like 50, right? So Lou picks him up in helicopter, that same helicopter. And the guy's like, oh, who's this guy? And then, but he takes him back to his apartment in Flushing, Queens, where his mom cooked the dinner, right? It wasn't like a fancy dinner in New York that he thought for his birthday. It was like, I have a helicopter, but I'm still at my mom's and she's making us dinner. Anyway, while they're there, Lou is like pitching his idea for a blimp business and like, I admire you and all this stuff. And so Theodore tells him, okay, how about this? You can come to Germany for like a couple years and train at my blimp factory and learn the blimp ways of the blimp. I feel like I said blimp like 100 times right now. Lou takes him up on the offer, goes to Germany for a few years. When he comes back to the States, it's now 1980, and he starts his own business.
As you can see on the tail, that's the name of our company, Airship International Limited.
As part of his business, right, he's trying to get investors and customers for this blimp business, except he doesn't have a blimp. He's getting the customers before he gets the blimp. He ends up somehow finagling a deal with Jordache Jeans, the jeans company. Yeah, he gets a deal with them that, hey, they're going to lease his blimp and he's going to put their logo and everything on it, make it gold. They're having this promotional party. The blimp is going to fly over with Jordache Jeans on it. It's going to be fabulous. Well, he doesn't have a blimp. So he ends up getting this guy from California that makes balloon envelopes, like a balloon shell thing that's not really a blimp. And then he goes and gets this dude to make an aluminum frame for this balloon. And then they like paint it gold and put the Jordache thing on it. And it's basically just, it's not even like a thing. It's a fake ass blimp. Okay. And so they're at the party and they're like sitting there and it's the promo party for Jordache jeans. And the blimp, fake blimp, starts flying over and like a mile into the flight, it crashes.
Only one aboard, the pilot, unhurt. A gust of wind reportedly hurled it to the ground.
And ironically, it like crashes into a garbage dump where it belongs. And people who saw it said that like even though it's supposed to be this gold blimp, it looked like a brown turd falling from the sky. So Lou, what he tells Jordache Jeans is he's like, I'm so sorry. It was the gold paint, like as it was real gold, is so heavy that it caused the blimp to sort of fall. And I'm sorry, like I used too much gold for you, basically. The thing crashed, and Lou, who had blimp insurance, okay, for not a real blimp, then files a claim, and that insurance company doesn't want to pay. They end up going to court, and he wins 200, not 200, oh my gosh, $2.5 million in damages in the 80s. So now he's like, okay, dude, my first scam paid off royally, even though it was an epic failure. I mean, that's got to give you some like confidence, you know? Emboldened by this, Luz does another scam, and this time it's in with the stock market. It's around this time that Lou meets this guy who's a Wall Street broker, but he does what's known as penny stocks, which if you watched Wolf of Wall Street, like that's how the guy started out. They're like these risky, like shitty stocks basically. And they end up doing what's known as a pump and dump scheme, which obviously obviously I'm not an expert in stock market, but from what I understand, it's like when you have these insiders who know about this stock, it's a risky stock, but they misrepresent the stock and make it seem like it's more popular in demand, successful than it is, which like falsely raises the value of the stock, which causes people to purchase it, and then that's how they make their money. Something like this. Basically, it was a scam. But from this, he was able to raise money for his blimp company that was not doing well. And he got $3 million from that. So now Lou is like, okay, I'm going to buy like a genuine blimp. And he goes to who? Theodore Woolenkemper, the best in the blimp business. And he buys a blimp from him. Lou then makes a deal with McDonald's, okay, to advertise on his blimp. And it seems like things are going well and he's got this legit business going. But then, unfortunately, the problem with Lou is that as much money as he makes, he spends more. So when he started getting real legit money, he started getting a private jet that he rented and like flew around and tried to make it seem like he had way more money than he did. And then he like bought a mansion in Florida and Orlando and just like rented an office on Fifth Street. I was gonna say Fifth Street Avenue, on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan instead of his mom's apartment. Like he's now the most expensive like real estate. He's like overspending. He doesn't need to do this, but it's all about appearances and it's wasteful. And he finds himself spending more than he's making, even though he's making a lot. Recurring theme. So by the way, this mansion in Orlando, it's going to be known as like kind of another Neverland Ranch in the sense that this is where he was alleged to have done inappropriate things with young males in the music industry, okay, which is very common apparently. So now it's the late 80s, and this is when shit starts going bad for Lou. His mom dies, and then his one blimp that he had, it got destroyed in a storm, and so he's like really going through it. The stock market crashed in the late 80s. Like he's not doing well. And so he decides, you know what? I'm done with New York. I'm going to Orlando, Florida, where he already has that mansion. It's when he's in Orlando that he decides that he is going to actually make another business and he wants to have an airlines, not just a one blimp. He needs a fleet of planes and he's going to call it Transcontinental Airlines, but he's not going to have even one plane in his airlines. How? He's a scammer. Okay, so this is what he does. Part of this brochure that he creates to get investors to invest in his airline business that he already claims has fleets of planes and stuff, like a fleet of planes. He takes a fake model airplane. Honestly, the audacity is borderline impressive. He takes a fake airplane, a model airplane, goes to the airport, does a little, thingamajig with the perspective and whatnot, and makes it look like the plane is taking off at the airport. And through that, he's able to get millions of dollars in investors who believe that he has airlines, because what is he doing, right? The money that he does have, he is using it to rent airplanes that he puts his logo on while he's renting them, but it's just one plane that he's renting. And he shows up to these investor meetings and all these places with a plane from transcontinental airlines. And so they think, okay, he has a fleet of airplanes, but really he's just renting one plane that day. He doesn't even have one that he owns, just a blimp that it got ruined. Another messed up thing about this is that a lot of his investors, were old people, retirees. I don't know, because he was in Florida. I don't know. But like that seemed to be a big part of the people who invested in him. So he had a lot of people who invested a little, and then over time they would invest a lot. But it was basically just like older people with a little bit of money trying to use it the best they could, and they trusted him, and he took advantage of them.
Affected my grandchildren because that money was there for their college education. It's gone.
It was like over 1,500. I think at the end he scammed 1,700 people out of $1 billion. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Basically, he had a Ponzi scheme, right? This is the whole like Bernie Madoff part. Remember, meets Harvey Weinstein, you get him. The Bernie Madoff part of him is that he had a Ponzi scheme, a huge one. And what it was he would take money from these investors. He wouldn't use it to actually do the thing he was supposed to do. He would use it to pay off older investors and keep up appearances. And that's how he did his Ponzi scheme. Another thing that he is doing that's going to factor in later, remember this, is that he's telling people who are investing in his airlines that Theodore Woolenkemper, the famous blimp guy, is co-owner of the airlines with him, which instills confidence. And then they invest in him, and then he forges paperwork like insurance things and banks that like he forges like nobody's business. So he's got all the paperwork, the illusions, the lies, and that's how he gets his money. Okay, so now we are getting to the early 90s, and this is when he gets into the music industry. Remember I told you Harvey Weinstein part? This is the Harvey Weinstein side of him. Okay, so it all began when he had this fake airlines, because guess what? By the way, Lou Pearlman's cousin is Art Garfunkel, okay, from Simon and Garfunkel, the singers. This was like one of the only things that he said that was actually true. And so, due to his connection with that and him claiming that he has airlines that even his cousins don't know that he's lying, I mean, nobody did, he gets these gigs where celebrities rent his airplanes that he's also renting from him to fly around. One of these celebrities is a boy band, New Kids on the Block. Have you heard of them? They were kind of a big deal. So Lou was very impressed. They're very young, attractive young men. Also, they have a lot of money.
How can these kids afford an airplane? And I was told these kids did $200 million in record sales and $800 million in touring and merchandising. I was like, I'm in the wrong business.
I got to get in on this. So that's when he decides, you know what? I want to make my own boy band. So in 1992, he puts an ad in the paper where he's like, I'm auditioning for a boy band. And the thing was, Lou wanted to do it differently. So at the time, New Kids on the Block, they were rumors that they couldn't really sing. Like they were just lip syncing and dancing. And so he was like, I'm going to get a boy band together that they look good, they can dance, and they can sing. So he made sure in the auditions that they could sing a cappella and like harmonize and do but like that. Here's where it gets messed up, because a lot of people speculate after what happened is that he didn't really get into the boy band business strictly for money. Really, he wanted the boys. Okay, he wanted to have young, attractive men that needed him, that he could exploit, and that he could leverage his power over them and maybe get them to do things. Okay. And so he starts out by being like a father figure, and he's like, call me Big Papa.
Who's my real Big Papa?
Now it's like 1993, and he put together a group of 5 young men that would be known as the Backstreet Boys. He named them after a flea market in Orlando called the Backstreet Flea Market. Okay. And he had a formula. He's like, you need to have a little Latina flavor and a good guy and a this guy.
You need to have the younger kid that definitely has a cute look. It's great to have somebody Latino who gives an extra flavor to it.
Lou put in a lot of his money in the beginning, like millions of dollars of his own money before they even had a record deal.
The kids should take a step back and say, how'd I get here? Who took the risk? Who put up all the money? Who's my real Big Papa?
He then got the former managers of New Kids on the Block. They were a married couple. Johnny Wright was their manager, and then his wife, Donna Wright, she was also managing them. And he's getting them to do these performances, like a performance at SeaWorld in 1993. He's paying for them to go on tour. And at that time, the if you wanted to make it, you would like perform at malls and stuff. And so he's paying for that. And so at this point, he's put in all this money, he's got these big name things, and even though they haven't made it, it looks promising. And so he wants them to sign a contract as part of this whole thing. And this is when it starts to get shady because actually Nick Carter, who is a member of Backstreet Boys, he was in talks to be on the Mickey Mouse Club, which is a very famous thing at the time. But his mom actually ended up not having him be on the Mickey Mouse Club and instead be in the band with Lou Pearlman managing. And it was like, wow, why would she do that? Well, I mean, obviously, in a way, it was a good choice because the band was hugely successful. But it goes to show you how maybe influential he was that she turned down an opportunity for him to be with Disney for like Lou Pearlman, who's a blimp guy who's now getting into bands.
Jane, how much money did you turn down by not having Nick be a Musketeer?
It was $50,000.
Another member of the Backstreet Boys was AJ McLean, and his mom, she wanted a lawyer to look at the contract before she signed. And Lou was like, no, we don't have time. It's now or never. Like, sign the contract or this is done.
Hey, we signed a contract. Let's move forward and let's make a lot of money together and let's make this thing happen. The parents signed on the guardian lines.
And so she feels like pressured into signing it. They signed it. They didn't really know. And turns out this is like an extremely predatory contract that they signed, even by the music industry standards, where most of these contracts are pretty predatory when the artist is starting out. They're performing now, they're getting a record deal with Jive Records, and they're going on tour and stuff like that. They're about to do a debut album. So in their head, they're like, we made it, like, or we're close. And so they didn't really see anything wrong with the contract yet. Despite being signed and doing all this stuff and having an album, the Backstreet Boys flopped in the States. For whatever reason, they flopped. And so Lou was like, you know what? Let's take them to Germany because apparently boy bands were popular in Germany at the time. And so they go there, they go on tour there in Europe, and they're really popular. They end up having like songs that people like. And that's when this guy called Max Martin comes into the picture. He co-wrote like some of the biggest songs. For example, Britney Spears' Hit Me Baby One More Time, Katy Perry's Roar, Taylor Swift, Shake It Off. He's like a hit maker. So he ends up co-writing the song for the Backstreet Boys, Quit Playing Games with My Heart, Quit Playing. So it's a huge, huge hit. They make it big. And also this airline company that Lou has is also booming because he's using it for the Backstreet Boys and he's getting all this notoriety. He's still not buying full-on planes. He's just renting planes for him and for the thing and just paying as little as possible to make as much as possible. And this is when shit gets ugly, dark, and disgusting. The thing with Lou is that he was very creepy in the sense that he couldn't keep his grubby little hands to himself, whether it was money or people's bodies, particularly the boys in the band's bodies. So he would do this thing where he was always like, "Oh, you're working out? Like, let me see your muscles. Like, oh, you got to," and just like start groping them, their abs, their arms, their muscles, just very, very touchy feely, to the point where they would kind of make jokes about it, like, "Oh, did he grab you today?" Like, but then there was this incident that happened when Nick Carter was 17 years old. According to people in the band and witnesses, and even Nick Carter's mom, Nick was going to Lou's house, the one in Orlando I told you about. That's like the Neverland Ranch, but his version. He was going there all the time with Lou, and then all of a sudden, it's like he didn't want to go. He changed, like something happened. So I want to read you quote from this article that his mom talks about and other people, and that's what I'm gonna do. So this is AJ's mom, the other band member. Her name is Denise McLean. This is what she said. She said, "My son did say something about the fact that Nick had been uncomfortable staying at Pearlman's house. For a while, Nick loved going over to Lou's house. All of a sudden, it appeared there was a flip at some point. Then we heard from the Carter camp that there was some kind of inappropriate behavior. It was just odd. I can just say there were odd events that took place." The article continues, "Neither Nick Carter nor his divorced parents, Robert and Jane Carter, will address what, if anything, happened. But at least two other mothers of Pearlman band members assert Jane termed Pearlman a sexual predator. Phoenix Stone says he discussed the matter with both Nick and his mother." Phoenix Stone was like a manager at the time of the bands. With Nick, I gotta tell you, this was not something Nick was comfortable talking about," says Stone. "What happened? Well, I just think that he finally, Lou was definitely inappropriate with him, and he just felt he didn't want anything to do with that anymore. There was a big blow up at that point. From what Jane says, yes, there was a big blow up, and they confronted him." In a telephone interview, Jane Carter stops just short of acknowledging Pearlman made improper overtures to her son. "Certain things happened," she tells me, "and it almost destroyed our family. I tried to warn everyone. I tried to warn all the mothers." Told that this article would detail allegations that Perlman made overtures to other young men, she replies, "If you're doing that and exposing that, I give you a big flag. I tried to expose him for what he was years ago. I hope you expose him because the financial scandal is the least of his injustices." When I ask why she won't discuss it further, Carter says she doesn't want to jeopardize her relationship with Nick. "I can't say anything more," she says. "These children are fearful and they want to go on with their careers." If they were being silenced or if they chose to stay silent for their career to pay off, it worked because the Backstreet Boys became, like, I think the best selling boy band of all time. At the time, I don't know about now with BTS and all this stuff, but at the time they were like, it was unheard of. I think they beat the Beatles. Business was booming, and Lou was starting new businesses under this transcontinental brand. So he had the airlines, then he had Transcontinental Entertainment, which is what he used for the boy bands, and then he started Transcontinental Foods, where he had frozen yogurt shops and pizza places. Lou even bought Chippendales, the strippers, that franchise. He bought Chippendales. So business was booming, and he was like opening and buying new businesses. This is when a hint of his scam started to come up. One of his previous investors, his name is Julian Bencher, okay? He turns up one day and he's like, "Hey, I want a payout for my investments." And Lou is like, "Oh, you know what? I can't because I don't own a lot of the stocks in this airline company." And remember how I told you earlier that Lou lied and would tell people that Theodore Kemper owned the airline company with him, Transcontinental Airlines? Okay. So he tells Julian, "I'm sorry, like, I wish I could give you a payout, but Theodore owns most of the company, like 80 something percent of the company, and he's refusing to pay me out." And so Julian's like, "What?" Turns out Julian, over the years, he met Theodore a few times and was in contact with him. So he decides to go to Germany and meet with Theodore and basically be like, "Dude, where's my money?" And Theodore's like, "What money?" Respectfully, who, like, what the fuck are you talking about? Respectfully. Theodore starts laughing and he's like, I don't own any part of Transcontinental Airlines. Like, I don't know who told you that, but that's not true. So now Julian's like, what the fuck? And so he starts digging. And that's when he finds out they don't even have planes, they don't have anything. The whole thing's a lie, it's a scam, whatever. He ends up confronting Lou. Lou ends up settling with this guy, Julian, for a certain amount of money, but part of the settlement was that Julian could not say anything negative or like reveal the secrets of what he found out about Lou. So if he did do that, he could have maybe warned people and stuff like that. But he was like, I'm going to take the money and run. And so even though he found out what Lou was about, he didn't tell anyone until way later when the whole thing blew up. This is when Lou decides, you know what? I want more money, more boys, and he's going to end up with more problems because he decides to create another boy band because in his mind he thought it's just a matter of time before someone like makes another boy band to compete with Backstreet Boys because they're seeing how successful this is and like why shouldn't it be me? He then starts to go about creating what will be known as NSYNC. This is when the Backstreet Boys felt like they were getting backstabbed.
That will make Backstreet feel a little backstabbed.
At first, Lou has this band together and they're like performing and stuff, but he's keeping it a secret, like the money he's spending on them, the gigs he's giving them, and then eventually it comes out. And that's when the Backstreet Boys felt hurt and betrayed, but at the same time, they're like, we can't really do anything about it, but like, damn, this sucks. And so what then develops is this rivalry between the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, and it spilled out into the fans.
They can move like nobody else. They're better than Backstreet. Backstreet's nothing compared to them. I love you.
This is when Brian Littrell from the Backstreet Boys starts to get a little suspicious because he's like, we're making a lot of money. Like you can just look at the news and they're like, they raked in this much on tour and this much in merch and they went on did this and this and this. And he's like, wow, they're saying that we're making hundreds of millions of dollars, but like we're getting paid $12,000 a year. This is not making any sense. So Brian then hires an attorney to look at the contract, and the attorney's like, oh my God, you're getting screwed. First of all, he is putting himself as the sixth member of the band. And he used to say it as a joke to them, like, I'm a member of the band. And they're like, yes, Big Papa.
And he would be like, oh, I'm the sixth Backstreet Boy.
But like, he actually put it in the contract, like, he's a member and he's getting the biggest cut. On top of that, he's taking a much higher percentage than a manager would take. On top of that, he's taking more shit off of every like source of revenue than a manager would take. So he's like siphoning off the tour sales, the merch sales, then his cut as a manager. Oh, I'm also a band member. Like he's just sucking them dry and they're left with nothing.
Big Papa was milking them dry.
Brian says he actually confronted Lou. Before he would sue Lou, he was like, sue Lou. Before he would sue him, he was like, listen, I'm giving you a chance to make it right.
I literally begged him physically in his office to make it right, and he didn't do it.
And Lou's like, bring it on, bitch. And so, boom, the Backstreet Boys, well, first it was Brian, sued Lou Pearlman, and then eventually the rest of the band would join in the lawsuit. It was like this whole thing. The fans hated Lou. They're like, you fucking piece of shit. You taking Backstreet Boys money?
Fans have even formed a prayer circle outside of the courthouse.
Please be with them today in the court. And we say this all in Jesus' name. We pray. Please be with them. Amen.
It was settled out of court. We don't know what the terms are, but it was settled. Well, guess what keeps happening? He keeps getting weirdly with the boys and touching and doing and whatever. And he's also still screwing over all the bands. Like that same shitty ass contract, he had NSYNC sign that same shit. He did the same shit to them, but they don't know yet, even though there's about to be a thing that happens that exposes it. But before that happens, he's still being fucking weird with the boys. So I'm about to tell you some things from this article that exposed him. Allegedly is what I'm going to say. But these are people who said this is what happened to them, and these were members of bands that he created. Disclaimer. Okay, trigger warning. First, there was Lance Bass, who was a member of NSYNC, and he said, quote, "We would hear things for sure. He would always have young boy limo drivers for Transcontinental Records. Those limo drivers would always be put into different boy bands. Then I'd hear rumors that he would molest the boys before they would even get into the groups. I don't know how much of that is true, but to me, where there's smoke, there's fire." There were several band members from different bands that talked about these aura massages that he would do. And this is like some of the milder stuff he did, which is he would be like, I minored in, he would lie. He minored in a million things. He minored in psychology and then he minored in like physiotherapy. And he would tell them that he could do these aura massages that would just basically fix their aura and magically give them muscles. And then he would find, like, for example, his assistant was this guy called Steve Mooney, and he did some really creepy shit with him. He would like massage him, give him an aura massage and basically just groping him and like touching his muscles and stuff. And then he would like be right in his ear in the back and he'd be like, "Do you trust me?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, I trust you." And then he's like, "I'm going to break you down and build you up. And we're going to be a team. And by next year, you're going to be a millionaire." And the dude's like, The next thing I want to talk about is this guy called Rich Cronin, who was the lead singer of a band called LFO. Maybe you've heard of them. I have. This was another band that Lou made. And what he said was so messed up. So he also acknowledged and talked about this aura massage stuff. He said, quote, "That was the line, the aura. I definitely heard that aura bullshit. It took everything in me not to laugh." He was like, "I know some mystical freaking ancient massage technique that if I massage you and we bond in a certain way through these special massages, it will strengthen your aura to the point you are irresistible to people." He then says, "Honestly, I don't think Lou ever thought we would become stars. I just think he wanted cute guys around him. This was all an excuse. And then lightning crazily struck and an empire was created. It was all dumb luck. I think his motives for getting into music were very different." Then Rich said some crazy shit. He was on the Howard Stern show.
He calls us up in his office and he says, "Guys, sit down. You guys just got back from Germany." And we did. We opened up for the Backstreet Boys. So he goes, "You know how big the Backstreet Boys are?" I said, "It's unbelievable." He says, "Well, let me tell you about that. You think they just got there from hard work?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "No, you're not going to believe this story. It makes me fucking sick." He's punching his fucking table. He's really acting good. And he goes, "Listen, I can't even say it." He goes, "There's a guy over there named Carl Leighton Pope.
Yeah.
This guy doesn't even exist, I don't think.
Right.
He's a media mogul. He runs the media." He came up to me at a party over in Germany. He said, "Hi, I'm Carl Leighton Pope." I said, "Oh, I'm Lou Pearlman." He says, "That's a good group you have there, the Backstreet Boys." He goes, "Yeah, I'm really excited about them. You know, they're moving up the charts." He goes, "I like that guy, this one of the guys. Now, this guy wants all this horrible shit. If someone spends a night at his place in Germany, then you'll blow up on the charts. It's that easy." "All right, I have to prepare you for it. So before you go there, because you might go crazy. You might go in the room and punch his fucking head in. You could murder him. I'm going to help you do it. I'm going to help you practice for it." He goes, "I'm going to help you do it. I know exactly what he wants."
Right.
I'm like, oh. He goes, "All he wants to do is touch your penis."
Oh.
And guess what else? In college, I was a psychology minor. "I'm going to help you get through it mentally." I was like, honestly, I was catatonic.
Right.
And he says, "So what do you guys think about that?" I didn't say a thing. He goes, "Well, think about it, guys."
And then it got to the point where he was getting pushy with him and he was just like straight up, quote, I'll read you the quote. He says, "He spelled it out for me one day saying, 'I want to touch your dick. I want to massage you a little. I'm not going to play games anymore.' Eventually, he did try and touch me, and some other dudes went for it. And if you did go for it, he took care of you. He'd buy him cars." So this is what I want to talk about now, which is the sacrifice they were talking about, or like the one guy from the band that had to like take it, maybe literally, for the rest of the band. Like take one for the team, whole new meaning. Apparently, this guy Steve, the one that was getting the massages where he's like, "I'm going to break you down and build you up," he was a live-in assistant for Lou in the hopes of getting in the band because he told him JC, from NSYNC, JC Chazé. Lou told Steve, oh, before he was in NSYNC, he was my assistant. Like, this is the path to become like in a huge band. So he was his live-in assistant in the hopes that he would become in one of these bands. But in the meantime, he was witnessing the quote. I'll read you. It said, this is what Steve said. He said, some guys joked about it. I remember one singer asking me, have you let Lou blow you yet? He said that more than once he encountered young male singers slipping out of those doors late at night, tucking in their shirts, a sheepish look on their faces. There was one guy in every band, one sacrifice, one guy in every band who takes it for Lou. That's just the way it is. Steve also talks about this band member that he won't name. He gave him a fake name, the Bart, okay, is what he said. And he said, I said, Bart, does he ever grope you? And he said, yeah, all the time. He said, Lou once grabbed him down there. I said, well, what do you do about it? And he said, look, if the guy wants to massage me and I'm getting $1 million for it, you just go along with it. It's the price you pay. This is the part that like I found honestly like more disturbing than anything is Steve. Okay, he said that he went to dinner one time with his dad, Steve and Steve's dad, with Lou. And Lou was being inappropriate, like touching him under the table, doing stuff to where Steve had like kind of an outburst at dinner where he was just like, leave me alone, like, stop. Like, what the hell? And guess what? He said that after that meeting, when he talked to his own father, who he thought would have been like really upset about it, the dad was like, I think that he's like a good guy. Like, I think this is gonna work and whatever. Because what would Lou tell them? Oh, you'll never work again. I'm gonna make you guys millionaires. Like, blah, blah, blah. So like these parents are willing to basically like pimp out their kids if they have to, like turn a blind eye for money. It ends up coming to a head with Steve and Lou, where over the years he feels like Lou is stringing him along and he's not making him like a member of any of these bands that he keeps coming up with. And so they end up having this fight one night where Steve essentially tells Lou, like, what do I have to do to make you put me in a band? And this is what he said happened. Okay. It says, I'll never forget this as long as I live, Mooney says. He leaned back in his chair in his white terry cloth robe and white underwear and spread his legs. And then he said, and these were his exact words, you're a smart boy. Figure it out. So Steve ended up leaving after that. There is another band member who made accusations, and this former band member was 13 years old at the time. Okay. And his name was Tim Christopher, and he was a member of a band called Take Five that Lou had created. Tim says that when he was 13 years old, he was at the sleepover at Lou's house, and he was there with another band member, and they were like sitting on the bed or whatever. And then all of a sudden, Lou shows up with nothing but a towel on. And they said he, quote, swan dived onto the bed that they were on and starts wrestling with them, during which his towel comes off. And they're like, oh my God, Lou, ew, gross. And he's like, oh, like, oh, I'm sorry, blah, blah. And then another time he said he came over to his house and like Lou opened the door just butt ass naked. And he's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, I just got out of the shower. And then like he had a theater in his home. And so they would be watching like Star Wars, and all of a sudden it changes. And now there's like porn on like in the movie theater in Lou's house, and they were like teenagers at the time, so they were like, oh cool, we love it, like whatever. But they also said that he was trying to be cool with them and see where they were at. So he was like, okay, are they straight? Because there was one girl group that he did form, he called it Innocence, barf. And the girls there, one of them alleges that there were cameras everywhere. That's another thing, we'll talk about the cameras in a second. But he had these hidden cameras everywhere, including apparently even the tanning bed. And that this kid, Tim, said that Lou showed him camera footage of the girls from the band Innocence at his home tanning topless, and showed it to them like, isn't this cool, whatever. And that like as a teenager, he thought it was cool, but now he realizes that's like really fucked up. So about the cameras, apparently he had cameras everywhere, and then he had a control room in his bedroom that had like all the cameras, and he would just like watch everyone, and he would have them all come over. Like that was the thing. He called it like a boy band like boot camp or like finishing school, and he called it O-Town, which will later be the name of a band he created, but it was like O-Town based on Orlando Town. And it was like O-Town, like Motown, like this. And so anyway, let's keep going. It's 1999 now, and this is when NSYNC would discover that they were getting scammed just like the Backstreet Boys. Same thing as Backstreet Boys. They're going on tour. They went on tour with Janet Jackson. They sold like 10 million copies of their album. Like they're making tons of money, merch, all this. And so Lou takes them out to dinner at the steakhouse in Beverly Hills, and he gives them these checks, like, and they're thinking, oh my God, well, like how much is going to be in these checks? Like they're expecting like millions, maybe even hundreds of thousands on the low end, but they got $12,000. And for them, they felt like, given the hours that they were working and the money that they were making, actually, if you just took the hours they worked, they made less than minimum wage with that amount. Not to mention, they know they're making way more. So, the same cycle that happens with the Backstreet Boys. They look into it, they find out the contract is predatory. Same thing, he's the sixth member of the band. He's taking all the cuts and all this shit, and they sue him. And the same thing happens eventually, which is they settle, they're no longer being managed by him. They go somewhere else. And that's when in 2000, they come up with this album called No Strings Attached with their hit single, Bye, 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 Bye. And I had no idea it was this dark because the whole thing really was about Lou. Like they cut the strings, they're no longer his puppet, like, and bye, bye, bye. And I'm over here singing this, not knowing it's a goddamn predator. Despite all these lawsuits from these two huge bands and all this shit and all this, Lou is still somehow succeeding. He's still making more bands. He is getting tons of money from investors and stuff. He has a show on MTV called Making the Band.
I want people to see how hard it is.
Oh my God, we're back again. When all the sisters everybody sing. In the corner of my mind.
Doesn't sound too promising.
But by 2001, 2002, the boy band thing is starting to fizzle out. All right. Like people are like, we get it. You're singing and dancing. There's 5 of you. It's choreographed, like pretty, like we get, like we're over it. It is around this time in the early 2000s when the boy band thing is not doing so well, when Lou Pearlman signs Aaron Carter. Remember Nick Carter's little brother? And he was successful. He was very young. And this is the sad thing, is because Aaron Carter's life really, he died very young recently, just a few years ago, from like a drug overdose. He at the time of his death was really struggling with drugs and the law and financially. I mean, the whole thing was very, very tragic. And a lot of people feel like it's because he got preyed on as a little kid and exploited by this disgusting industry and these disgusting people. And like, this is what happens. So he signs Aaron, and unfortunately, right, Aaron ends up suing him as well for basically being a shitty manager and scamming him out of money. Also in 2002, several things happen. He gets sued by Aaron Carter. Aaron Carter's brother, Nick Carter of the Backstreet Boys, the one I told you, there was this incident when he was 17. He gets in trouble with the law in 2002. He's like arrested. He's getting drunk, getting kicked out of places. Like, I don't know what's going on with Nick Carter, because it's like there's all these accusations about him doing like essay stuff that have come out. There was like even a documentary that came out recently where all the accusers were talking about him. And then also, I remember, I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was a thing that happened with him and Paris Hilton when Nick Carter and Paris Hilton were dating. And it wasn't said explicitly, but like they were dating. And then all of a sudden, there were pictures of Paris Hilton with like bruises all over her. And it was like implied that Nick somehow did it without her fully saying it. And then they like broke up. And so it's like, what is going on? I don't know. But it seems like both of these boys had some messed up thing happen with Lou Pearlman, and their lives are like spiraling out of control, but yet they're like so terrified that they're not speaking out against him, even though other people are like, dude, he did something to them. It's really messed up. Also in 2002, Lou is continuing to scam. He's like, all right, so the music industry, I'm not doing as well anymore. The airline thing is not doing good either. And so he's like, I'm going to get into modeling, not for him, but like an agency. He ends up buying this modeling agency that turns out to be a total scam. It would go bankrupt in 2 years. When I was reading the investigative things about this modeling agency, I almost died laughing because this local news station was getting complaints from models because what it was a website where the models would have to pay like thousands of dollars to get on this site that apparently had talented, you know, connected modeling agents who they would link up with on this website and it would make them successful. But that's not how it works. In the modeling world at that time, or maybe even now, the model doesn't pay up front. Like if they see you and you have potential, they're going to take you and they're going to pay for all this stuff for you to go and get booked and they take a percent of that. So what ended up happening was as part of this investigation that this local news agency was doing because they got complaints from people who used that service and felt it was a scam, they go in there and they try to sign up as an agent on the site and they're all able to like get on the site even though one of them's like the producer for the show and has like no experience in this industry. And then they signed up the freaking reporter's 10-year-old dog to be a modeling agent. And the dog got accepted as an agent on this site. So it was a scam. Anyway, it goes bankrupt in 2 years. And so now we're in 2004. And this is really the beginning of the end for Lou because shit's not going well. You know, he's got dog model agents. He's getting exposed for that. The boy bands have left him. Like the music industry shit sucks. He's got an airline with no planes, like a fashion show with no fashions.
Who was this wonderful person that was given a fashion show with no fashions? How dreadful.
Like, what are you doing? Scamming. That's what he's doing. And so the money is not really coming in like it used to, but he still has to pay these investors in order to keep the scam going. So this is when he decides to take out insane loans from banks. I'm talking like $150 million loans from different banks. And because he had this name recognition of being Lou Pearlman, the manager of the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, they kind of didn't do their due diligence as banks and gave him these loans, huge, huge loans at face value. So he's able to stay afloat a little bit from these loans, but it's all going to catch up to him soon. What ends up happening is that one of his oldest, most loyal investors was this guy called Joseph Chow. And over the years, he had given Lou Pearlman millions, like 14 or so $1 million, and didn't ask for it back and was just like very supportive. And he ends up dying in 2004. Now, although Joseph Chow was very loyal and trusting of Lou, his wife was not. She was like, something's off with this guy. And it got to the point she would actually get into arguments with her husband over these investments for Lou, and he would defend Lou and everything like that. So when Mr. Chow died, the family then got like an attorney for his estate. And that is when Lou was approached for like a payout, like they wanted his money back that he invested, like the returns on the investment. Well, Lou is like, he gives them all these cockamamie excuses why he can't give them the money. And so they end up hiring a lawyer. Well, Lou gets wind of this and he he ends up suing them after they hire a lawyer before they can sue him. He sues them for like that he's not required to repay them the money that Mr. Chow invested because of this letter that Mr. Chow signed saying essentially Lou doesn't have to pay you back if he doesn't want to. The lawyer for the Chow family was shocked. He was like, there were several weird things about this. He's like, first of all, he filed this lawsuit in Chicago, which is where the Chow family is based, but not in Florida, which is where Lou Pearlman is based. Like, why is he wanting it in this jurisdiction and not his own? Well, he does some digging and he finds out that's because the courts in Florida are sick of Lou. They've already figured out his whole thing. He's like been sued a million times and he's a scammer and all this. So he knows that if he files this lawsuit in Florida, they're going to like look at it with scrutiny that he wouldn't get if he filed it in Chicago. That's number one. So now the lawyer's like, okay, this guy's got all these lawsuits for being a scammer. Like, let me go over the paperwork and this letter, why would Joseph Chow sign this letter saying that, he didn't have to pay him back after investing millions of dollars? While he's looking at the different paperwork, he notices that two of these paperworks, including the letter, has the exact same signature. Like they're identical, like suspiciously identical. So he like puts it up to the light and gets the other one and puts them like to the light, like investigation. And he's like, oh my God, it's the same exact, it's a forgery. The attorney starts building his case against Lou Pearlman and he's finding out all the shit that I told you, like all these like everything. So now it's like 2005 and this case is building. By 2006, the walls are caving in, crashing down. One of them, both of them. Remember, Lou took out loans from these banks, huge, huge loans. Well, guess what? Now they need to be paid. And guess who can't pay them? Lou. So now the banks are after him. And once the banks are after you, good luck, because now it's like the FBI is involved in all this and everything, and like word is coming out, and this attorney is talking to this investigator, and this victim is talking to that guy, and it's like everyone is starting to finally connect the dots. Like this guy is full of shit. It got so bad that there was this guy, Frankie Vasquez Jr., and this is such a sad story because this guy was a childhood friend of Lou's, was so loyal. He invested money in him. He didn't have much money to give, invested all of it. On top of that, he worked for Lou and was just very loyal to him. And when times got tough and he needed money, and when he went to Lou to be like, I want some of the $100,000 that I invested, Lou literally was like, I don't have the money. You're on your own. And so this was like earth shattering for Frankie because he's like, what do you mean I'm on? Like he felt betrayed as a friend. He felt like abandoned. Then he's realizing he doesn't have any money. All this money is gone. He ended up taking his own life. They found him in his car in the garage, like with the, you know, engine running. So he took his own life like that. So it was bad. It was really, really bad. And Lou, though, he is still like keeping up appearances in the sense that he is trying to make another band happen. It's this band called US5, and he's trying to do the same formula where they're like flopping in the US. So he's like, let's go to Germany. And so there's like this award show in Germany, and he goes there with this band. Meanwhile, like his home is getting raided. This investigation, they're like forcing his companies into bankruptcy, like charges are about to be filed. And once he goes to this award show in Germany, he basically goes on the run. FBI then raids his home, his offices, and everything, and they discover that this is the longest running Ponzi scheme in US history at the time, over 20 years, that he defrauded 1,700 people, over 1,700 people, in the amount of over $1 billion, and that at that moment he was in debt $300 million. And there's all these people who are mostly older people with their retirement money all tied up in his shit, and there's like no way they're going to get it back. So they start seizing stuff, and he's on the run. They're like, all right, they start taking whatever they could take to sell to try to recoup this money. Well, Lou Pearlman, in his home and in his office and stuff, he had all this supposedly valuable memorabilia, art, things that were like supposed to be super expensive. Well, it turns out when they go to sell it, it's all fake. So literally, this guy was full of shit. Nothing about him was real other than he's a piece of shit and his cousin is Art Garfunkel. Like, that's it. When Lou is on the run, he uses someone else's credit card to book a 5-star hotel in Bali. And he uses a pseudonym. He books it under the name A. Cognito Johnson. And so he's in Bali. He's like on this vacation on someone else's card, and it's like dumpster fire back in the States, and he's just like, Bali, baby. Like he's having his aura. Maybe he's like doing an aura massage on himself. Then while he's there, there's a German guy named Thorsten Eborg. Iborg. Okay. So at this time, Lou Pearlman is pretty famous in Germany because, he did all the boy band stuff there. Now there's all this news of him getting raided and all this stuff. So he was like on the news. So this guy, Thorsten, recognizes him at this resort in Bali. And he said, quote, that he noticed a pale, overweight American on the terrace. He said, that's Lou Pearlman. So he took a sneaky little picture. And he goes online and he ends up submitting it to a reporter. Her name is Helen Huntley. She would be like a big part in getting him caught because, they post about it on the news. Before you know it, the FBI is in Bali and they arrest Lou Pearlman and they end up bringing him back to Orlando where they charge him. He gets charged with conspiracy, money laundering, making false statements during a bankruptcy proceedings, among other things. When I was doing my research, I noticed there was this reporter that was talking about how a few days after Lou Pearlman was arrested and brought to Orlando, that this reporter went to his home. And when he was there, he spoke to the neighbors, and what they said was insane. I want to read you the quote. So it says here, later I chatted with the couple who live next door. They never saw much of Pearlman, they say, but he was always polite when they did. Parties? Not many, they say. In fact, the only time they ever wondered about their neighbor was several years ago when a gardener motioned towards Pearlman's mansion and made what seemed like a strange comment. If you have a little son, the gardener said, don't let him go to that house. Bad things happen there. Even though he was arrested and they had all this evidence against him and he pled guilty, the victims of his frauds, they just couldn't get any money back and they were mad about it. Like they were at the courthouse pissed.
Outside court, an emotional exchange between an investor who lost money to Lou Pearlman and one man who has enlisted Pearlman to manage his son's ban from jail.
What the hell are you doing?
You don't even know who I am.
Nobody cares about your stupid CDs. We want our money.
Even if he gets the money back, he should be put in jail and kept in jail until he dies.
The judge tries to incentivize Lou Pearlman to pay back the investors by first he sentenced him to 25 years, but then he told him for every million he pays back, then he would get a month off his sentence, which means essentially if he paid everyone back, like he would not have to serve any time. So Lou Pearlman responds being like, I can do that. I just need you to allow me to continue to make bands from prison. Like I need internet, I need connection, I need a phone. And the judge was like, no. When that didn't work, Lou was like snitching on other people in the prison with him. Like he was a jailhouse snitch. Like he basically was like, hey, so there's this guy in my cell who's like a cop killer and I heard him. He drew diagrams and did all these sketches of what happened and was like, I got a confession from him. Let me testify against him. Will I get less time? So he tried that. And then a few years later, in 2010, he had a stroke. He survived. And then 4 years after the stroke, he did this jailhouse interview, which was delulu. He says, I'm smarter than Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff, he didn't actually sell anything. He didn't have anything. I had a commodity. So, and he was a scamster. He's like, I was trying to make it right, but they wouldn't let me because they're not letting me make bands anymore. I could be making bands from prison and then they would hit it big and I would pay off all my debts. And then they asked him at the time, because One Direction, that band was huge at the time. He's like, oh, have you heard about One Direction? He's like, yeah, if I was out, I'd give them a run for their money. And basically he's like, let me out, let me make bands again. Delulu Lou. And it's what are you going to do when you get out, huh? You're going to make a band, molest the band, steal their money, scam people? Come on, let's be honest. That's all you know how to do. So 2 years after this interview, he dies in prison from a heart attack. He was 62. And when he died, okay, so Justin Timberlake, from NSYNC and Lance Bass, and there's certain people who were, his band members or whatever, they tweeted like RIP, like, yeah, he wasn't the best guy, but like RIP. But his lawyer, dude, his lawyer, after he died, went in on him.
He was a human being, but not one I give a damn about. Most diabolical, scheming, crooked, and dishonest SOB you could ever imagine.
Mason says he's represented Pearlman for years while Pearlman is being sued by members of the Backstreet Boys. And after they won, Mason says Pearlman swindled out of having to pay his lawyer fee, one that totaled $16.6 million.
Case after case after case and saving him. Turn around then to stick it to us.
It's really messed up that like the money part got jail time and all this stuff, but the other stuff, I think it's because nobody spoke up. And it turns out there was like one kid who tried to speak up against Lou with his parents and stuff, like tried to go to police, but when Lou caught wind of it, before they could do that, he had his lawyer file something with the FBI being like, these people are trying to extort me. And so it scared them off, and it seems like the other victims didn't really come forward, whether they didn't want to because they were benefiting so much, or if they weren't really that successful, they were maybe just afraid of Lou Pearlman, like he was untouchable. That is the Lou Pearlman story. What a piece of shit, like objectively. Anyway, let me know what you guys think about the whole thing. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.